Well, I was planning to find a more interesting backdrop for my review of Dune 2, but since I got called into work yesterday on my day off, the supervisor called me and said he had like 5 open routes and wanted to know if I could come in. All kinds of people injured and stuff at the post office. One person left to take a little acting supervisor job somewhere. So I guess maybe we're back now to working our days off all the time. But Dune 2, I'll agree with most people who've reviewed it and say it was a great movie, But what I wanted to look at was from the point of view of somebody like me who read the original 3 books back in the 70s, when I was just maybe like, 8th grade or something like that, and got really hooked on them from a young age. And the next books that came out, like God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, Chapter House Dune, the ones that Frank Herbert wrote, I read all those as soon as they came out. Chapter House Dune was the last one that Frank Herbert wrote. Then there was quite a gap, of course, for a while. And then his son, working from his father's copious notes, along with another science fiction writer, started writing some books. They did some prequels to the original Dune, taking us back into history to the Butlerian Jihad and stuff like that, and the formation of the Bene Gesserit, and all that kind of stuff. And then they went into the future, thousands of years, after Chapter House Dune, and eventually finished out the story way in the future with kind of like the ultimate fulfillment of the prophecy, about the Kwisatz Haderach. For those of you who've read the books, you know what I'm talking about, if all you've seen is these last couple of Dune movies, or maybe the first one at least, the Dune 2 is or the second part, however you want to refer to it, as Dune 2 or Dune Part 2, is officially being released in a couple of days on Friday. I went and saw it Sunday night. They had a lot of theaters. I think they call it like a fan first premiere or something like that you could go. Had like one show, and so my wife and I went and saw it. And so what I'm going to talk about, obviously I'm slanting this toward people who've already read the books and stuff and who know what the original storyline was. And you'll understand what I mean. Even though I liked it a lot. The Denis Villeneuve, or whatever his name is, the director, he claims that he tried to get close to what Frank Herbert really wanted, his original intention with the books. He didn't like the fact, that a lot of people looked at Paul Atreides as a hero, and that he felt like in Dune Messiah he tried to kind of tamp that down a little bit. And in the movie, the director uses the character of Chani to kind of take up that point of view. And that's the one part of the movie that was kind of ruined for me. I hate to use the B word, but he kind of turned Chani into a bitch, and, or you can, if you want to, you can say a strong, independent woman. She, in the whole movie, though, she's just like, being cranky about shit and raining on Paul's parade. And I know part of that is because in the 21st century, in 2024, you can't release a movie with just having an adoring female following Paul around, telling him how great he is. You have to have the woman kicking ass and being her own person and not following the man around. But you can go overboard with that, I remember back when NCIS Hawaii came out a few years back. I was like, thought, man, I'm going to check this out. Another show set in Hawaii. At the very start, they had the strong, independent woman of color show up on scene and tell some white guy that her balls were bigger, and let's not have a pissing contest because I'm going to win. Later on, this one big ex-special forces guy or whoever he was comes home, and his sister turns around, punches him, knocks him down. Because in the movies, petite little girls, they're perfectly capable of kicking, the asses of Delta Force operators and stuff. And I understand, movies are fantasy fulfillment. But going too far to try and incorporate that into every single movie that you make or every show you do ends up ruining a lot of stories. And for me, I liked Dune 2 a lot, but that one aspect of it where she's constantly, fighting against him, what he's trying to do and everything. And the way the movie ended, this is a spoiler alert if you don't want to hear it, but in the book, Paul Atreides, he arranges a political marriage to, the emperor's daughter, just so he can claim like a legitimacy, in his ascension to the throne and becoming emperor. And but Paul's mother and Shani in the book, they're both there. I forget the exact quote now. She said something like, we're the ones that history will remember as wives, because the Duke, that was one of his regrets, that he never married Jessica, and here we have Paul, doing a political marriage. But he made it clear in the books to her, to Chani, that she's never going to have an ounce of his affection or love or anything, that it's clearly an arranged thing, and that, of course, in the later books, he and Chani have children. And, but that's where the story, going out of his way to try and keep it from being a white savior story, which is the criticism everybody wants to level at it, and, she seems to be hypersensitive to, kind of ruins some aspects of it. One thing we need to remember, and this, if you've read the books, that this is, the way things are. Leto too, Paul's son, actually kind of, told his father, look, you were afraid of your destiny and of doing what needed to be done. And so, if the author really had the intention of making Paul look like a bad character, I understand he was trying to show that there are, like the whole Messiah thing and people looking for a Messiah, how this can be a very dangerous thing. I mean, we can see that today in our world. We got way too many people sitting around hoping for the end of the world and waiting for somebody to come back and rapture them away and fulfill all these like ancient fairy tales, But in the books, Leto too, when he merges with the sandworm, and becomes like the god emperor of Dune, he specifically was doing that because Paul walked away from what he saw he needed to do because he couldn't handle it. And somebody else then had to step up and do it. So eventually someone had to do it. It's true that Paul wrestled with his vision of where things were going to go in the future. But the only path forward, if you look at the books, that was going to ensure the survival of a strong, an independent human race and scatter the human race throughout the galaxy or the universe, it was something that required a certain kind of tyrannical oppression for a while. So you can look at all the horrible things that happen in Paul's name and billions of people dying and stuff, and we can't necessarily say that that's a good thing, but in the context of the story, apparently, with their prescient visions looking forward into the future, that was the one path forward they saw that could actually save the human race, that it had to, certain things had to happen. And to wake the human race back up again, and bring back in that wild kind of, genetics. So it was a good story. I mean, obviously I liked it. It was a great movie. My wife, for sure, liked the second one a lot better than the first one. Much more action, and, you could focus more on the action instead of trying to unravel some of the story that was going on. There was a lot of character set up in the first movie, but still, that was the only jarring aspect for me. What they did with the character of Chani was, for someone who was a fan of the books for pretty much their whole life, it was a pretty jarring contrast. And I understand the reasons why he did it, both artistic and as a sensitivity issue, for people who don't want to be offended by a white savior story with all strong male characters. On the other hand, the Bene Gesserit, pretty much run things in a lot of ways, and they were certainly, sun is finally up. they were certainly strong female characters. They're pretty much running the galaxy from the shadows, you know. But anyways, my impressions of it, yeah, sure, I'd give it like 2 thumbs up or 5 stars or whatever. But for people who were fans of the books for a long time and know the whole storyline before they see the movie, there are certain things about Chani's character, and especially the very ending of the movie. I mean, another spoiler alert here. You know, she basically gives Paul some dirty looks, you know, as he takes the princess's hand and demands, you know, that, you know, he give her her hand in marriage, and then she glowers at him and then takes off back into the desert calling a sandworm, and that's the way the movie ends. And my wife was like, really? I mean, it was that was the one problem. It was a horribly unsatisfactory ending to the movie. I know he wants to maybe look at it as kind of a segue into part 3, where he takes on some of the material from Dune Messiah, but I don't know. I mean, I see all these things where people talking about it's the greatest science fiction movie of the decade or the century or whatever. I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but certainly as a person who has waited since the 70s to see somebody make a decent movie adaptation of Dune, I was pretty happy with it. I saw the first one, you know, that came out back in the 80s, and man, I was home from work with bronchitis back up in Pittsburgh. Still dragged myself out to the theater to see it, and oh, what a disappointment, you know. And, you know, all the crap, and, you know, the heart plugs and the weirding modules and all this nonsense. You know, it was a great looking film in some ways, but just really some bizarre crap. You know, it's so finding something where they were a little bit more true to the original story at least is fine, but in some ways, except for the you know, miraculous changing of Arrakis into a paradise with just a word that happened in the first movie, in some ways the first movie was a little bit more true to the books. So as a fan of the books, I'm pretty happy with the movie, but I wouldn't agree with all the choices they made in it. I understand, though, that this is 2024, and you know, you have to make certain changes these days to material to make people be happy with it, and maybe to make it appeal more to like the younger female audience as well. But I liked it. I know it doesn't sound like it, maybe from what I'm saying, but I'm not going to sit here and, you know, rave about how spectacular it was compared to what the books were. My wife says now she has to read the books because I'm always telling her how you know, all the things they changed. But there's no way you can really rival the book in a movie. It's nice to have those visuals and to actually see it and be immersed in it at a theater, but no one can match the scope of the books and just making it into a movie. He did a great job, though, trying, and certainly I'm looking forward to seeing some things, you know, what he does with it in the future, maybe. One thing for sure, you know, another thing, those of you who have read the books will know that Paul's sister, a greater period of time passed in the books, you know, and in this movie, Paul's sister wasn't even born yet, you know. So they pared down the kind of number of characters they had to deal with. Didn't have to have a child actor come in to kill the Baron at the end and things like that, like he did in the book or in the first movie. But all in all, good movie.